Today I effed up by framing an 8-year-old kid and ruining his life. Of course it wasn't actually today. This happened in the early 90s. The names have been changed to protect the innocent. The rest is exactly how it occurred. I was in 2nd grade and constantly getting into trouble. One day the teacher, Mrs. Jig, announced that it was time for SSR silent sustained reading and we were to pick a book and head out to the courtyard. I decided I was too cool for SSR, and that hiding under my desk for an hour was somehow better than reading in a sunny courtyard. So I hid. All the kids left the room. I overheard Mrs. Jig ask the parent assistant to make some copies of the pop quiz. Mrs. Jig headed outside with the class. I kept hiding and watched as the assistant came back, put the quizzes on the desk and went outside. I emerged from hiding and went over to Mrs. Jig's desk. This is when my impulsive 8-year-old brain truly began to shine. I took the teacher's adult scissors and cut the pop quizzes to bits. It was only after I was done that I even considered that I would get into trouble. So I put the teacher's scissors on Paul's desk. Paul had been mean to me a while ago. Grabbed a book, slipped out the door to the courtyard, and sat up against the wall reading without anyone the wiser. Yet again the glory of my undeveloped brain shone. By the time SSR was over I had completely forgotten about cutting up the quizzes. The class was now seated at their desks inside and I was spacing out as usual when I heard the yelling start. Mrs. Jig, Jack, why did you do this? Oops. I realized I guessed wrong and left the adult scissors on Jack's desk, not Paul's. A small error that would echo for years. Jack, I didn't do it, Mrs. Jig. Mrs. Jig, don't lie, Jack. It will only make it worse. Jack, I didn't do it. Mrs. Jig, you're in trouble, Jack. Jack grabs the scissors and raises them towards the teacher's face. No, Mrs. Jig. You're in trouble. Holy peep. I was completely unable to process what had just happened. Jack ended up getting restrained on the floor by the parent assistant and the vice principal, screaming the whole time about how he didn't do it. I didn't see Jack for a couple of weeks, and when he returned to school everyone called him Scissors Kid for the rest of the school year. The school shut down that summer. It had been closed before and only reopened that one year to accommodate overflow while construction on a new school was wrapping up. My class was split between several schools when we attended the next grade. I never saw most of them again. I forgot Jack's name and could only remember him as Scissors Kid. 11 years passed. And some things that should not have been forgotten were lost. History became legend. Legend became myth. I had just started college. One of my high school friends joined the army and was preparing to leave for Iraq. His parents invited me and another one of his friends over for a send-off dinner. His mother said a prayer before we started, asking God to keep her son safe. It's clear she's getting emotional. His dad tries to lighten the mood and follows up the prayer with a comment that he'll be just fine as long as he's got some scissors. The joke is lost on the other friend and I. The soldier's brother and parents start laughing and see that their inside joke needs some explaining. His mom starts to tell the story about how her son threatened his 3rd grade teacher with a pair of scissors. Thus began the biggest holy peep moment of my life. Jack was Scissors Kid? Jack clearly didn't think the joke was funny and immediately starts denying cutting up the quizzes. His parents keep teasing him and obviously didn't believe their son. The guilt was too much. Jack was about to go to war. He might die. I had to come clean. Me, was this Mrs. Jig's class? Jack, how do you know that? I explained myself. Told the story of how I thought I was framing Paul. Jack told me I ruined his life, that they made him take anger management classes. His mom defended me, saying that I may have framed Jack but I didn't make him threaten the teacher's life. Jack went off to Iraq. We fell out of touch as most high school friends eventually do, but I'll never forget the insane serendipity that will forever link me to Scissors Kid. TLDR, I framed a small child with anger issues, causing him to threaten his teacher's life, and I only came clean years later right before he went off to war. The correct thing to do was to find him after he came back from his suspension and tell him that you saw Paul put the scissors on his desk. Undefined. Edit 2. I watched The Kid Detective last night. Excellent movie. BTW. I can't help but think that who cut up the pop quiz would have been a perfect mystery for little Abe. You scare me. Then Paul would have known that Op was trying to frame him. It could lead to trouble for Op if Paul was a bully, for example. Yeah, and let's not forget the whole potentially ruining another person's life bit either. His mom was right though. No one framed or made him attack the teacher with scissors. A lot of people seem to misunderstand my position on this. Link to my other more in-depth comment explaining I don't support child abuse. Exactly. No one would send an 8-year-old to anger management for cutting up quizzes. It's the threatening part that got him there. Maybe he'd been framed for quiz cutting so many times that he finally just snapped. People without anger issues wouldn't snap. The snapping is exactly why those classes were needed. I was once pulled into the vice principal's office in 8th grade. A younger student at the elementary school across the street had picked my picture out of the last year's yearbook as the person that ran straight at him after school the day before. And yelled, "I'm going to beat you up." Of course, I hadn't done that. I was with my best friend and both our moms. Luckily, the vice principal knew my mom, and I told him he could call her and verify that I hadn't threatened anyone under her watch. I was dismissed and dismayed at the accusation. I kept thinking about it and later on in the day, remembered that I had raced my friend to his car. And while we were racing, I was running in the direction of another kid. And I did yell out to my friend, "I'm going to beat you." So mystery solved. Growing up, I often imagined being in line somewhere and hearing someone tell the story of how an 8th grader threatened to beat them up, how he pointed out who it was, and no one believed him. 24 years later, and there I am, sitting on the toilet retelling this story on Reddit because it hasn't come full circle yet. I had a kid that used to run laps in elementary accuse me of stalking and trying to mug him on the playground, directly after he broke my nose for standing in his way. Never really learned what happened to him. Last I heard he may have been arrested for drug charges, though. A kid reported me for breaking his thumb in middle school. Which I did. What he left out was that I did it because he stole my backpack, and when I sneakily took it back he decided to punch me in the breast repeatedly. On one punch I caught his thumb and bent it back until I heard a snap while he screamed. I feel zero remorse. He was 2 years older than me and punching a girl in the breasts. Thief him. He deserved it. When I got called to the principal's office to explain, I was crying because I thought I was going to be in trouble. I mean, I did break his thumb and I admitted to it. The principal told me everything was okay. I was right to defend myself, and send me back to class. He got a broken thumb and suspended for 2 months for assaulting another student and sexual assault, and I got in no trouble at all. Honestly, I think the broken thumb was probably punishment enough, along with the fact that I'm sure his parents were super pissed to learn their son was hitting a girl. But I was just relieved to not be in trouble. Undefined. Your principal was amazing. Yeah, he was pretty cool. He always heard you out and didn't punish students for defending themselves. Why was the teacher so certain Jack did it? Because the scissors were on his desk? Surely whoever did it wouldn't leave the scissors on their own desk, which is exactly what happened. Teacher sounds dumb tbh. When I was 16 I took my GCSE exams. In one of my exams a kid scrawled my name on a desk. Later in the day I got pulled out of class, and was directed to the table with my name scrawled on it. The teacher who pulled me out of class looked at me incredulously and was like, "Explain this." I was a straight A student. Told her it obviously wasn't me because I wouldn't be stupid enough to write my own name on a desk. I then pointed out that this end of the hall was where the foundation students sit. Foundation papers only go up to grade C, basically the papers who cater to lower achievers. She looked at me for a moment, then realized she looked like a complete fool and defined. In secondary school, someone scribbled my name, my mobile number and the message for free blowjob call me on my desk in permanent marker during recess. A teacher saw it when we got back to class. Guess who got punished for it? None of those teachers should be allowed to teach, or come close to a school. They make people around them dumber. I wasn't expecting the Lord of the Rings snippets, but that cracked me up. I just lost my speep at almost 3 in the morning at work. LMFAO, that was so great. I'm going to try so hard to start working it into my own storytelling. A small error that would echo for years. Is that part one of those snippets? I couldn't find any others. And some things that should not have been forgotten were lost. History became legend. Legend became myth. My kindergarten teacher thought I wrote on the counter because there was a letter E and I had to sit out in recess to clean the counter. I didn't do it, and to this day I know I didn't do it because it was before I came in that morning. I didn't throw a fit, but it sucked being blamed for something I didn't do and to miss recess. That's wild, it came full circle. But if as a kid he pulled scissors on the teacher, he needed anger management classes. It is unfortunate he wasn't able to put one simple misunderstanding behind him for over a decade though. That's a lot. I can see why he has anger issues and had problems letting the incident go if his family teased him about it for over a decade after, especially if he had to go to anger management therapy over it. I agree. If he made it clear after all those years that it bothered him for his family to make those jokes, they should have stopped. Not how my family works. I'm mentally messed up too, although I don't show it in my interactions like Jack. Just grades that don't reflect my ability or intelligence, and getting prescribed ADHD meds that I don't take cause they make me wired. Same, except him just add and they give me Adderall, which in the dose they give me has a subtle effect if any. I too neglect to take it most of the time though. No, Mrs. Jig. You're in trouble. Call an ambulance. But not for me. LOL. This reminds me of the South Park episode where the boy set the classroom on fire and the other kid is punished for it. Everybody pathologizing this kid without considering the fact that it's an 8-year-old with an incomplete perspective on social norms being put in an incredibly frustrating situation by being falsely accused of something that he doesn't have the language skills to defend against. It's a bit of an overreaction for sure, but if he just raised some scissors and didn't try to attack the teacher or anything, then it makes a lot more sense. I feel like the fact that he ended up having to be restrained and that the adult said that the teacher's life was threatened implies that he did more than just hold up the scissors. If that was all he did, there would have been no need to restrain him. They would have tried talking him down first. He must have lunged or did something more. I remember a kid in elementary school being restrained just because he wanted to leave class really badly. Maybe in second grade we didn't have all the context, but I feel like if he pulled a weapon or something like scissors, that would have been more memorable. I can't even imagine watching some kid get blamed for something I did and not only seeing the framed kid endure an insulting nickname, but actually forgetting his real name. I would feel like a total piece of speep, and it would haunt me and change the way I saw myself. I expect to be downvoted to oblivion for this comment, but damn, that's some cold-hearted speep. Jack will never trust another human being again. Not the best time to be in a foxhole. I'm very confused how you were friends with him but didn't realize you went to school together. Feet misses. Jig. All my homies hate misses. Jig. Man, I remember SSR, or USSR, uninterrupted sustained silent reading as our teacher called it because he liked the Soviets. Hey, we had USSR too, and when I was reading this post I was trying to remember what it stood for. All I could come up with was unsustained silent reading and figured, there's no way that was right. I don't remember the teacher being particularly cynical. Also, the globes back then had USSR on them, so that always confused me why we named reading time after a country. The most remarkable thing about this story is the amount of memory loss every person involved has had. So going through the comments, I read two things. 1. 8-year-olds are peeping stupid and would leave evidence on their desk being too peeping stupid to hide it or place it somewhere else because they don't expect to be caught since they are peeping stupid. After they read a story about an 8-year-old hiding evidence on another's kid desk to blame him for the crime. 2. If an 8-year-old is throwing a tantrum because he got wrongly blamed for a crime he did not commit, he has anger management problems because he should definitely know better. This sounds way too made up. I know, right? How are people not noticing this? Do you always have classes with different kids every time, or how does the system work in the US? I can't imagine not recognizing someone's name who I was in second grade if we were again in the same class in high school. The area we lived was rapidly growing. New schools were constantly being built and the districts were redrawn a few times. I'm still not 100% sure this was second or third grade, but I know it was the only K6 grade I had with Jack. I met him again in 8th grade. We were good friends and hung out a lot for the next 4 years, which is why it was so crazy when the dots finally connected at that dinner. I'd been over to his house so many times over the years and no one ever brought up this story until then. I feel like I definitely would remember someone after 6 years after something like that happened. Keep in mind that he possibly barely knew Jack in the class. I mean, he didn't try to target Jack's desk. He could easily have been a classmate he didn't really keep tabs on.